call on Lori Miller.
I don't have a lot of degrees or anything. I'm just a mom. And I've come to you first of all to thank you, all of you, for being here today and for giving us this opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, the board, the ones actually making the decision on the proposed science standards, are not available to hear our concerns again. This is difficult to understand, especially when our points are constantly being twisted in the media. We have been called ignorant, uneducated, stupid, and in some instances much worse for the stand that we are making against the wording of the proposed science standards. Well, to that, I say, educate me, but educate me fully. Don't just teach me the side that one group believes. Teach me all of the sides. If there are findings that do not support some areas of the theory of evolution, then I want my children to know about them. Do I believe all of the facets of evolution? No. Do I teach my children to believe in evolution? No. Do I believe that my child needs to know that what some scientists believe about this theory to be successful in life? Yes, I do believe that. I think they do need to know about it. I do want my child to learn about evolution, but I want my child to learn all about evolution. I want him or her to learn that there are many very intelligent and learned scientists who do not believe fully in evolution, and I want them to know why those scientists believe the way they do. I feel that by teaching the students of Florida to put blinders on when it comes to evolution, that we are doing them just as much of a disservice as if we tell them that no one believes in evolution and the whole thing is bunk. There is so much controversy over this issue. Doesn't it deserve to be looked at by a variety of people and not just a few with a bias? I feel that just by tweaking some of the words in the standards, we can all win. Isn't that what we are here for? We are not supposed to be pushing any secret and biased agenda, but just making sure that the children of Florida receive the best education possible. I know that this is an issue that so many feel strongly about. So I feel the best case scenario is for both sides to give just a little bit so that we can make this a win-win situation for everyone, especially for our children.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's the next call on Michelle Adam.
Well, I think it's safe to say it's afternoon now. So I just want to thank you for letting us have the opportunity here as the public to speak our concerns. I think I agree with a lot of the other people's views as far as the status of the Standard 15 on evolution is the fundamental concept underlying all biology. I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of scientific facts. I'm not going to give you a lot of evidence. I think the very nature of science is based on observable facts in a natural environment, and the fact that this entire evolutionary status is not based on facts is kind of what a lot of people here have already stated, so I'm not going to be redundant in that. I am, although, going to state my personal thoughts as a student, as a former public student in the high school system. I don't know where I would be today if I had never had the opportunity to learn both views. I did not grow up in a Christian home. Some have not. I grew up in a very neutral home. So I was given the opportunity growing up to learn and choose for myself. And in doing that, I was able to build a foundation on my beliefs and then to go and take that in whatever field I plan on doing so that I can be successful. But I don't believe I will ever be successful unless I am firmly grounded in what I believe, where I stand. And so with that, I think that I'm with others when I say that I think by not proving both views, we are limiting that capacity, that capability for students. Just a brief personal anecdote. I can recall just 3 or 4 years ago standing in my public high school system with my fellow peers and debating my views. How will I ever have the opportunity to do that, or my daughters or sons have that opportunity? If all they're learning in the classroom is one solid view, there's not going to be any debating. There's going to be one complete majority view of that, and then there's not going to be a complete learning. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so with saying that, I do value us teaching evolution as well as coupling with other worldviews, because in a sense, I believe evolution has just become another worldview. I want my children to be able to have the opportunity to learn both sides. If not, then I venture to say they may have to be pulled out of the public school system, and I don't want that to happen because I appreciate the system, I appreciate the institution, I appreciate what it's done for me and grounding me and molding me to the individual I've been. And I appreciate the standards that you're setting. I appreciate how we've taken the benchmarks and we're taking them a step further in their complexity and not such a broad basis. But I do ask that we please look at the agenda further and what is our ultimate goal here in providing students with a well-rounded education. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. James Connor, Dr. James Connor.
So, Director Tappan and Commissioner Smith, Chancellor, I'm Dr. James Connor, a family physician. I love science, and just want to try not to be redundant today, but say macroevolution then is not supported by the fossil record. It's held together by, or even by molecular biology. It's held together by a belief or faith in unverifiable speculative forces of chance over millions of years without a creator. And this is an atheist way of faith or belief. Actually, many taxpayers, we're seeing today, parents, teachers are Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, are offended by the proselytizing of our children as they are made to recite a frog became a monkey, became an ape, became a man, like on page 49 of our local biology book. How can we develop thinkers if we are mandated what to believe? And actually, the Supreme Court talks about the Lemon Law, which says that the state of Florida may be endorsing, advancing, and actually establishing atheism as a belief system in our state. Yet America was founded with freedom of religion and freedom from religion, even if that religion is the belief in no creator at all. Non-atheists are invited to get out, leave, go to private school. Is that equitable? Our forefathers paid the price for freedom. We pay taxes, and now we have to pay extra for private schools too. Even if someone homeschools, these mandates will be enforced in the home, or else one will not do as well on state-established tests. Isn't it about time atheist Sunday school was removed out of biology class? I'd rather see all-inclusive blend, tolerance, and coexistence rather than segregation of theists and atheists in our public schools. Some are
1 minute left. 1 minute.
Thank you, sir. Some are concerned that any belief held outside of atheist evolution stifles scientific progress. Yet our nation, being steeped 47% in intelligent design thinking, has led the world in awesome scientific advances. We've surpassed atheist Russia and China hands down. Perhaps more students would pursue the sciences if we were not so discriminated against by professors deeply biased in evolution. Director Tappan, I point out on your test scores, there was 3 points for evolution questions, and that was an incredible presentation. But it ends up alienating 47% of your students and parents. Finally, rather than chasing each other like the Luos and Kikuyos in Kenya, can't we here in Florida learn to appreciate each other's belief system? And just a moment of levity, it seems easy enough, even a caveman could do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Christopher Parkinson. Dr. Christopher Parkinson.
Good afternoon. I'm a professor at the University of Central Florida, a biology professor, and I'm here not to really address whether we should teach evolution in science. I'm here to address the scientific principle. It is science, and it's not a belief system. It is all about testing hypotheses, observing natural phenomena, and then making decisions. And if those decisions are wrong, because we go back and we test them again, that's what science is about. Evolution is science, and I believe and I commend the writing of the new science curriculum. I have students that are coming out of the Florida public school system that don't understand science. They don't understand how to think their way out of a paper bag. And by changing the science standards, will allow those students to start to think on their own. I believe that we need to change the science standards. Economic development, as Dr. Toner mentioned, we want to bring many people to the state of Florida. Economical development, biomedical development. If we don't increase our science standards in the state of Florida, we're not going to be able to do that. Now, to talk about evolution as a theory or a fact, it is a theory. It's a theory with a capital T, just like the theory of gravity. If I drop an apple, we know it's going to fall to the ground. Evolution is occurring around us. We see it today. I can show it to you. And that is what is important. We have to be able to teach our students about what is happening in life today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Don Blumhagen? Very good. Thank you, sir. Apologize for the...
No, that's fine. As a side note to start, my son is an African-American student here at Jones High School. He got all high fives in his FCAT. He loves science and math as I do, and he's planning on pursuing an engineering degree at the University of Florida.
Very good.
I found it interesting as I was reading the proposed standards that suggest evolution as fact, standards that suggest that the Bible isn't true when it says the world was created in 6 days. Even though the Bible clearly says Jesus himself was a creator, Jesus himself talks about creation, the first man and woman. Jesus proved he was God by raising from the dead. These standards suggest that that isn't true. Well, the only question I have for those who believe that is, this apple I've been eating here, is it bitter or is it sweet? Well, you can't answer truthfully because you haven't tasted my apple. Well, neither have some of those folks tasted my Jesus. I have a few copies here if anyone would like one later. A list of 50 scientists with PhDs in their respective fields of study who all agree that the existing scientific evidence does not support macroevolution, but that the evidence does indeed support a literal 6-day creation, which, just like the Bible says. The evidence is amazing, and the list represents approximately 12,000 scientists around the world who concur with this same opinion. 12,000 scientists, and that number is growing. Macroevolution has simply become statistically impossible. Scientists, especially in the area of cellular research, are confronted more and more with that conclusion. Now let me illustrate. Imagine we're playing a basketball game. Our team is down by 30 points and there's 10 seconds to go. Now technically the game is not over, but we realize that we need 10 three-pointers just to tie the game. Now we can statistically, mathematically, scientifically figure out that the time it takes for the ball to travel from the three-point line to the net and go through, well, if we make it, down to the floor, back to the three-point line, it could not possibly happen in only 1 second. We can measure that. Thus, even though technically the game is not over, we've proven statistically, mathematically, scientifically that it is over. And when we look up at the stands and see all the people leading the arena, well, they've figured it out too. I've checked out the web pages about the new science standards. A lot of work has gone into these proposed standards. Outstanding. In fact, the slogan of the business that my wife and I here run in Orlando, Jab Designs Orlando, our slogan is raising the standard. Now, I haven't seen the revisions that Mary talked about, but change the verbiage that limits us to calling macroevolution theory factual science. It is not. It has become statistically impossible. And actually, it cannot even be true science because no one can go back and observe the events as they occurred, which true science demands. Let's not be afraid to examine the available facts, wherever they may take us. Examine the evidence. Examine evolutionary thought. Examine intelligent design. Let us, as teachers, be deserving of the apples of appreciation that our future students give us when we let them develop their own critical thinking and come to their own conclusions.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Curtis Dalton? Curtis Dalton?
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Curtis Dalton. I come today to appeal to you as a veteran, as a father, and as a student maintaining a 4.0 average at a college here in the state of Virginia, in Florida. I'm originally from Virginia. But I chose to serve my nation before I chose to get my education. And I take it very seriously, the faith and the freedom that we have here in this nation, free to exercise in the beliefs that we have. But I thank you so much for the work that you have put into this project and for hearing us here on a public forum. A few hundred years ago, Our forefathers fled England for the freedom to believe as they chose. They did not flee because of religion, but because they desired to live according to their convictions. Religious beliefs just happened to be the issue that was being forced upon them. Today we stand in the most free nation in the world. Men have bled and died defending the freedom you and I enjoy today to believe and live according to our conscience. The proposal you have before you transcends all matter of religion. Although evolution and creation both are belief systems or models by which we interpret the same evidence, evolution has held the floor in the classroom for many years. Proponents of intelligent design have stood by and silently allowed evolution to take its course. But now, you are considering to mandate evolution as the only valid lens to view scientific observation. Our forefathers fought for the right to believe as they wished. If you mandate evolution as the standard for Florida education, you will be as notorious as the school boards that remove prayer from school, Roe versus Wade, and any other monumental decision that has deteriorated the moral fabric of our nation. The potential impact this proposal has on our nation is unlimited. Florida Board of Education will be forever known as the first to buy the lie of evolution as fact. You will take away the freedom to believe as one chooses.
One more minute, sir.
But more importantly, you will begin an avalanche of seismic proportions that takes away the abilities of our young people to process and sort information. Logically choose a system of belief. You will take away our children's freedom to ability to think. They will no longer need to think for themselves. They will no longer need logic. You can just mandate everything you think is right, and when they continue to fall behind other nations in academic scores, we'll just look at the facts of the statistics and we'll tell them they're not true because we don't believe them. History is in your hands. Will you take away freedom? Will you take away logic? Will you make history next week by forcing our children to learn a biased view of scientific information? With great power comes great responsibility. You are responsible for shaping the minds of our young people. It will be an irresponsible act to mandate evolution as the only option without researching the vast list of top-notch scientists who find intelligent design as a more valid belief. The only one I would like to mention to you is Dr. Richard Sternberg, double PhD in biology at the Smithsonian Institute, has taken the stand for intelligent design and is facing a career hindrance in his life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on, Bill Stevens. Billy Stevens.
Again, say thank you to all of you. Good morning, and thank you for all the work that you have done. I agree with all of the statements that have been made from you and as well as from the people that we do need a better education system. I mean, it's very evident in the thinking processes of our students today that they are subpar. When we concern, or when we look at and we can look at how the other countries are doing, how the other nations are doing, and even other states within our own nation. I have a concern, though. One concern is just there seems to be a lack of communication, and I'm not sure why this is, and I'm not sure where it is, between the DOE and the people of the state of Florida. There are a lot of people that I am friends with, have acquaintances with, that are part of the education system, who did not know about this meeting, who did not know what was going on, who did not know about the proposals. And so it concerns me that there are things that are going on kind of behind the scenes that we don't know about. So that is one concern that I have as a citizen of the state of Florida. Secondly, science prides itself on observing the facts and then coming to conclusions based on those facts. The concern that I have is your plan that you have put in place, particularly concerning evolution, is basically you're telling our kids this is the conclusion, and now we're going to give you biased facts to support what we believe. Rather than simply giving them the facts, and rather than telling them what to think, I would ask the board that you would just tell them how to think. One of the concerns that I have, obviously, too, is the FCAT. There seems to be a concern among the teachers in the public school system that we spend the majority of our time teaching to the test rather than teaching them how to think critically and then perform well on a test. And I think as I was growing up in the Florida public school system, we didn't have the FCAT. I mean, we were just simply taught in the classroom, and we were able to perform well, I think, on the SATs and the ACTs. And the graph that you showed earlier with the declining scores of the kids in the state of Florida, I think, resembled that. Secondly, I think we come representing the people today, the people in this room that have stepped to the microphone. We come representing the people. It seems to me that it is very clear. Thank you. It seems to me that it is very clear that the popular opinion among the people today is that we are concerned about teaching evolution as truth and not as a theory. So as we pride ourselves in our government as being a government of the people and for the people, we will be watching next week to see how this vote comes out and to see how our voice is represented in the vote. And another concern, too, just in the whole evolutionary process is that of natural selection. It's survival of the fittest. Based on those theories, murder would be okay. Because if you are not able to protect yourself, defend yourself, it's simply survival of the fittest. So there are a lot of concerns that I have with morality issues that come along with the teaching of evolution. Evolution does not give value to life, nor does it give meaning to life. And so those are the concerns that I have. I thank you for your time. I thank you for hearing me and hearing all of us. And again, we will be paying attention next week to how the vote comes out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Robert Gentry? Robert Gentry? Robert Gentry? Gentry, G-E-N-T-R-Y.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity of being with you today. Some of you are going to be very surprised to hear that evolution has been disproved. I was a graduate of the University of Florida Physics Department, became an evolutionist big time without arguing with people about evolution for many years. Then I decided to go back and look at science for myself rather than what people told me was true. And guess what? I found that indeed there is scientific evidence for creation. During the early 70s and early 80s, I was at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for 13 years, publishing scientific evidence for creation in the world's premier scientific journals. We didn't hear about that because the evolutionists did not bring it to the center of scientific attention, keep it buried under the morass of evolution. However, I was invited to testify at the Arkansas Creation Evolution Trial in Little Rock in 1981 in December. There I testified to the evidence for creation, and again, the world's preeminent evolutionists were there to see if indeed they could respond at all to this evidence for creation. They failed to do so. One of the world's leading geologists, G. Brent Dalrymple, said I had found, if you want to read it in my book is online, Creation is a Tiny Mystery, it doesn't cost you anything. You will see that Brent Dalrymple said I had found a very tiny mystery which he would someday like to find the answer to. Years passed, nothing happened. I spoke at the University of Tennessee. Someone gave me an appointment, and I spoke widely at the University of Tennessee in 1987, brought this out to the public. And in the process of doing that, I responded to the National Academy of Sciences publication, Science and Creationism, a view from the National Academy of Sciences, published in 1984. What does it say? It says that Genesis, the evidence for Genesis has been sympathetically considered and is now an invalidated hypothesis. So I wrote to Frank Press, president of the National Academy of Sciences, and asked him to come. He failed to come. He wrote a letter. Then in 2000, I spoke at Wichita State University, and then at that time asked Bruce Alberts to come, then president of the National Academy of Sciences. He didn't come. So at that point in time, I said, Dr. Alberts, if you decide not to come or send a delegation of your scientists to try to show where this published scientific evidence is incorrect, here's what I'm suggesting we should do. I'm asking for the media to arrange for a live prime TV forum where you would bring your delegation of NES scientists and meet me on prime time television. Guess what? He didn't respond to that. The National Academy of Sciences has just now published another booklet like this other one, Science and Creationism, a view from the National Academy of Sciences. It says the same thing. I want to ask some enterprising organization to organize a public meeting in Tallahassee, Orlando, and let me advertise to Dr. Cicerone, the now president, to come and meet me publicly and see if we can settle this issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Robert Hankinson, Hankinson.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me this time. I'm here because I'm frightened. I'm frightened for my kids. I'm frightened. I have a sixth grader and a fourth grader. I'm frightened because of the effort in this country to reduce science to somehow something that's driven by a majority vote. And that scares me. And that scares what I'm worried about what my kids are going to be taught. The framers, the writers, the researchers behind these new proposals, the reviewers, everyone did an exemplary job coming up with these new standards. I'm begging of the board, let them do their job. These are the experts. I'm not an expert. I would submit that no one in the board is an expert on any of these aspects of science. It would be silly of me to pretend I am. Let the experts in science decide what my kids are taught in science. That's all I ask. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Margaret Ishii, I-S-H-E-E. I hope I didn't torture that name too badly. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, my name is Margaret Ishii, and I'm here representing myself, but I am also a science teacher in the state of Florida. And I can testify firsthand to the pressure felt due to the large number of benchmarks to teach to the test. And we really don't have much opportunity to go in depth with the concept, to facilitate a better understanding for the students. So I'm very excited about the new standards and the ability to go more in depth with them in these topics. As a teacher, though, I feel that we have a responsibility to show all sides of any concept with an unbiased perspective. As teachers, we're very influential people, and if we teach evolution as the fundamental concept that underlines all biology, students will only understand one side of this issue. Evolution is a theory. It has both supports and faults. I'm not advocating that creationism or religion be taught in the classroom. However, if our goal is to prepare our students to be competitive in a global market of science and engineering, we must give them the ability and the freedom to think critically and to make decisions with a full knowledge base. So I'm just asking you to please allow educators to continue to teach the theory of evolution with both its supports and faults. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. John Stenberger. John Stenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. My name is John Stenberger. I live in Orlando. I'm a father of 3 children and a husband as well. I'm an attorney here in town, and I also head the Florida Family Policy Council. We are associated with Folks in the Family, and we represent the interest of hundreds of thousands of parents and families across the state of Florida. First, thank you so much for your hard work, and if the Board of Education is listening, thank you for your hard work. I hope that they are listening. I wonder. For all your hard work. We support all the proposed math and science standards except the specific language that we've talked about here in the biological sciences. I stand here today representing over at least 30 groups. We held a press conference previously. We have a coalition letter, and we speak with one voice on the following issues. Number one, we are not advocating that creationism be taught. We're not even advocating that ID be taught. We're advocating that all the evidence be taught about evolution. We want evolution to be taught. Let me say that again. We want evolution to be taught, but we want the strengths and the weaknesses of the theory to be taught, not just assume that it's true, and you have to go from that premise. So what we want to say here really today is 2 things. Number one, we're very concerned about the issues of notice and due process in this whole entire process, and frankly, with all due respect, we believe it's illegitimate. The first hearing in Jacksonville, there was no press release. The meeting was canceled. There's no press release. Even the reporter from the Florida Times Union, the education reporter, she didn't even know what was going on in her home city. Even after it was rescheduled, she didn't even know what was going on. And so there's a real problem with that. This process has sought to avoid the public, to avoid the press, and to avoid even a parent here who is aggressively trying to find information in Ken Kendall. Secondly, we believe that the proposed standards are poorly worded. They are not scientifically neutral as it relates to origination of species, and by their own wording do not permit the free flow of scientific evidence and to critically examine both sides.
You have 1 more minute.
There's nothing objectionable. There's nothing about the language that we're criticizing here that is going to make the process any better.
that's going to make students any smarter or that's going to improve the educational system. In fact, we believe that it's going to make, if it's enacted as it currently is, it will make it less scientific and more philosophically dogmatic than it's ever been in Florida's history, and therefore not a good thing. Finally, on behalf of all of our constituents across the state of Florida, we are really asking, in fact, we're pleading and insisting that the State Board of Education directly hear from the parents whose children are being affected. You know, I have no confidence that these folks have business. They're volunteers. We're grateful for their service. But they're the ones making the decision. They need to see the whites of the eyes of Kim Kendall and their testimony. Being hidden and taking DVDs, that doesn't cut it. If they're making the decisions, they need to come up to the plate. And we're asking for 15 minutes for both sides. There's organizations here. We'll coordinate who the speakers would be. And it's very reasonable, it's democratic, and it's fair, and that's what we would ask this board.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Jerry Messels. Again, I'll extend apologies for torturing names.
I'm Jerry Mizels. I'm a professor of chemistry at USF, and I'm one of the framers and writers who worked on the new standards. My particular assignment was to work with the physical sciences standards. Since I'm a chemist, it made a lot of sense. Subsequent to an editorial opinion in the Tallahassee Democrat, the framers and writers decided to write a letter to the board and asked me to read it to you, which I will do and then give you a copy. And here's the letter, and I'll make some personal comments if there's enough time in the end. We are members of the Committee of Framers and Writers that compose the proposed Florida Science Education Standards, widely acclaimed nationally and statewide by education experts and scientists. The standards have understandably generated opposition from special interest groups because of the standard's honest and straightforward presentation of evolution as the only scientific theory able to explain innumerable facts and observations that have been gathered over 150 years. There is no longer any scientific criticism of the theory of evolution. There are no scientific explanations of this observable evidence other than evolution. No evidence has been presented other than those that support evolution. The negatives that come out of the, well, I'm editorializing, I shouldn't do that. This is documented convincingly in the National Academy of Sciences report, Science, Evolution, and Creationism. Claims to the contrary are not correct and are motivated in part by a decision made by a Pennsylvania court in Dover, Pennsylvania in 2005. As dedicated citizens, we are committed to helping Florida's children be competitive in the modern world. We are frustrated by the disproportionate publicity and the political pressure that has been brought to bear on decision makers. Yielding to these pressures would be a real disservice to Florida because it would not only seriously impede the education of our children, but also create the image of a backward state, raising the risk of Florida's being snubbed by biotechnology industry and other science-based businesses, thus damaging our state's economy. Many of the writers who worked on the draft standards have strong religious convictions. Those of us who hold such convictions see no conflict between our faith and the theory of evolution. We are strongly supported in our views by letters signed by over 11,000 Christian clergy, which states the following: religious truth, and this is a quote, religious truth is of a different order from scientific truth. Its purpose is not to convey scientific information, but to transform hearts. We believe that the theory of evolution is a foundational scientific truth, one that has stood up to rigorous scrutiny and upon which much of human knowledge and achievement rests. To reject this truth, or to treat it as one theory among others, is to deliberately embrace scientific ignorance and transmit such ignorance to our children. We urge school board members to preserve the integrity of the science curriculum by affirming the teaching of the theory of evolution as a core component of human knowledge. We respect the right of every person to hold their own beliefs. However, the cause of helping our children grow intellectually and morally is best advanced by their learning about the natural world as we know it from centuries of critical and careful scientific investigation. The science standards are the product of hard work by knowledgeable people, scientists and citizens. We ask that the Florida Board of Education to approve the new standards as submitted by the Department of Education.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, I'd like to call Deborah Walker. Thank you. Deborah Walker. Thank you. Good. Okay. Good. Thank you very much.
As a school board member and science standards framer, I understand the political and academic components of the decision you face. Today I offer 2 comments for your consideration. The first concerns the current state of Florida science education. The second centers on who should be setting science standards policy for public schools. I've taught anthropology courses, including human evolution, at several universities. I'm currently in my 4th term on the Monroe County School Board. I'm a lifelong Methodist and active member of Burton Memorial UMC in Key Largo. We're hosting a Bible study in our home this evening, an event I'll miss because I'm here addressing you. My God is not small enough to be challenged by the rational approach of science, along with 11,000 plus individuals that signed the clergy letter. On the committee, I worked on the high school life science standards, which has proved to be the most controversial. We worked hard to develop rigorous, relevant standards. There was little politics involved. As science teachers, professors, and scientists from the community, we drew on high-quality state, national, and international sources. We reviewed public input and made revisions based on expert comment. I commend DOE for its exceptional oversight, and thank you, Mary Jane. It's not surprising we're having a political meltdown over Darwin these days. Our current standards do not address the basic components of evolutionary arguments, and most adults in the education business don't know the subject well. I've heard from my daughter, a third-year forensic anthropology major at USF, that many of her classmates are completely unfamiliar with basic concepts such as adaptation, mutation, and selection. These students struggle to understand high school material in upper division college courses. They may be unable to access the literature in the discipline due to inadequate K-12 preparation. We do a disservice to our children if we do not prepare them for the science economy of the 21st century. Who then should be charged with setting new standards? Several Florida school boards have submitted resolutions asking you to make revisions where evolution is concerned. A review of their 2007 science FCAT scores, the BOE's chosen statistic, reveals that most rank near the bottom in Florida when tested to the old standards. Do we want these boards setting science policy in Florida? I think not.
No.
I ask you to consider the 8 months of work by your expert panel. The new standards reflect the best science policy Florida can offer the next generation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Justin Devereaux. Justin Devereaux.
Good afternoon, thank you for your time. I would like to speak specifically to the Life Science Body of Knowledge section, which begins with Standard 15, which states, evolution is a fundamental concept underlying all of biology and is supported by multiple forms of scientific knowledge. I know evolution to be a false theory based on half-truths and outright falsities. But I would like to address not the science that leads to the theory of evolution, but how the theory of evolution has led to the genocide of millions of innocent people around the world. First man I would like to comment on was responsible for the deaths of over 46 million Europeans during the Second World War. Adolf Hitler is his name. Hitler outlined his evolutionary worldview in his political autobiography, Mein Kampf, which basically means my struggle, a phrase which he borrowed from Charles Darwin. He believed that people, like animals, were in a constant struggle for survival. he believed the Aryan race, as embodied by the German people, was the evolutionary pinnacle. His entire belief in the master race of supermen was based in a belief in evolution, which he proposed to speed up by his various ethnic cleansing policies. The second man I would like to bring to your attention is Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin murdered over 40 million people during his reign of terror, including 18 million people who were sent to the Gulag Archipelago, including 18 million who were never returned after going there. Stalin was studying at Tiflis Theological Seminary when he started to read the works of Charles Darwin, and his life would never be the same. After reading and accepting the work of Charles Darwin as fact, Stalin became a staunch atheist and a believer in evolution. After embracing Darwin's evolutionary ideas, Stalin has been freed from his conscience and his morals. This allowed him to kill, murder, and rape with impunity. The final man on this who's who of murderous tyrants is Mao Zedong, the former dictator of China. His reign of terror was responsible for the death of over 20 million people. Chairman Mao is also known for his Great Leap Forward policy. Within this policy, Mao mandated the reading of material used in the Great Leap Forward.
You could wrap it up now.
I do not propose all evolution of tyrannical murderers. However, having a keen belief that people are nothing more than another form of evolved animal is a conviction that cheapens life and excuses and even encourages the most heinous of behavior. I simply ask that you review the evidence for evolution for yourselves and carefully consider the ramifications of teaching generations of young Floridians that their lives mean nothing, and they're simply another form of evolved ape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Matthew, please come forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew LeHue, and I'm one of many college students who found out about this meeting 3 days ago and have traveled over 300 miles to attend it, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak. While I may not have a degree or I may not be a scientist, I do share with some other people in this room a curious distinction in that I was born and raised in Florida and I'm a product of the Florida public school system, and I'm proud to say so. However, I graduated less than 2 years ago, and I do have firsthand knowledge of the current state of our Sunshine State standards. And I have to say that these revisions are long overdue. And I really thank you for the effort that you've put into this, and I'm really excited to see what future students are going to be doing and having this focus further on in their educational careers. It is well known that the current emphases on reading and math have placed science education at a far lower priority than it should be. This means that the little time we have to teach science needs to be used well. To teach evolution as a fact, without mentioning the objections raised by many respected members of the scientific community, such as Michael Behe, Dr. Alistair McGrath, and Dr. Jonathan Wells, is to move the evolutionary theory from legitimate science to a faith-based belief, similar to the theory of intelligent design. When the evolutionary theory is taught, legitimate objections have to be raised, such as the Cambrian explosion, in which many different species appeared in an incredibly short amount of time, in direct contrast to Darwin's theory. Another objection to the evolutionary theory includes the concept of irreducible complexity, which raises the question, how could the human eye have evolved piece by piece at a time when it was only useful as a whole? The science standards make no room for these objections. Students should be taught about how many of the most popular symbols of evolution are flawed. For example, the Stanley Miller experiment, which was the famous test that first allowed for the possibility of the random generation of life, had starting conditions which are now known to be inaccurate. When the proper conditions, thank you, sir. When the proper conditions are applied, the test which so famously produced a random assortment of scattered amino acids now produces something else entirely, formaldehyde and cyanide, not exactly the building blocks for life. The fossil record has not shown a single legitimate transitional species to be discovered. Evolution is a theory that is anything but proved, and when we teach it, we need to acknowledge this fact, and we need to acknowledge that there are legitimate complaints against the theory, and we need to teach both sides of the education. I understand that we're trying to give Florida students the best education possible, and so we have to wonder, are we doing this just so that we can improve their test scores, or are we doing this so that they can be the best critical thinkers that we can make? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ravi Jain. Last name Jain.
Well, my name is Ravi Jain, and this is my 6th year teaching AP Calculus A, B, and B, C, and AP Physics B and C. And I am very impressed with what you guys have done, and the standards, the work of the writers and the framers is impressive, and I applaud much of it. I would like to argue simply that the use of language which speaks of evolution as a theory should continue to be employed. Theory is a strong word in the scientific community. In fact, in some sense, science cannot come to any conclusions that are not theories, strictly speaking. Science is based on observation and inductive reasoning, as pointed out during the scientific revolution of the 17th century. And although through deductive reasoning, one can rationally prove necessary truths, with inductive reasoning, one can only have a probability of predicted outcome. For example, if an ornithologist travels to 20 countries and observes that each swan he sees is white, then he may inductively conclude that all swans throughout the world are white. The scientist would have good data to support this conclusion. It would be a sensible theory. But it would in fact be wrong. There are black swans in Australia. Because science is based on observing instances and then abstracting to a general rule, it can only provide probability. That is why it is proper to call scientific conclusions theories. If we want to uphold solid standards for mathematics and science and promote the search for unknown truths, we should emphasize that science creates theories, not laws. Consider two examples from the history of physics where ignoring the theoretical status of a scientific conclusion obfuscated the truth. Newton's law of universal gravitation had tremendous explanatory power and mobilized modern science like no other previous idea. But when Einstein posited his general theory of relativity 250 years later, his theory challenged Newton's conception of gravity. Now there are multiple competing theories of gravity. And although Newton's early formulation was helpful, it was not the final word or necessarily the proper description of the phenomena. In a similar case, the law of the conservation of energy was believed absolutely true and immutable for many years.
One more minute.
The law stated that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It could only change forms. But when again Einstein discovered that E equals mc squared and that energy could be turned into matter or vice versa, the so-called law turned out less binding than the binding energy of an atom. This is not unusual or awkward. It is the manner in which science moves forward and adds to the vast storehouse of knowledge. But it is important to clarify for students that all of science's conclusions are provisional and based on observations of instances. As long as there are no instances that falsify the hypothesis and it is rigorously explored, it may be called a general theory. Scientific theorizing, therefore, is distinct from mathematical proof. I'll omit some to tie it up. Let me just conclude by saying, so as we consider how to press forward science in the state of Florida, let us remember that the process of science requires first observation and then inductively making conclusions, which by its nature produces theories, not proofs.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Peter Dunkelberg. Peter Dunkelberg. Sir Peter Dunkelberg.
He's coming.
Okay, sir. Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon, and I'm glad you called this meeting so we can talk about the new science standards. I remember right back at the beginning, you mentioned one thing, that the current science standards got a grade of F on a national scale. I'm sure that was a good motivation to do a really good job on writing these new ones. And I've checked the new standards. You did do a really good job. You really did. Florida can get an A this time, provided we don't mess up at the last minute. And that's what this meeting is about. Some folks want to introduce creationism in the standards. Now, I know these days you're not supposed to call it creationism, not even intelligent design anymore. It's called faults of biology, criticisms of evolution, something like that. Changing a name doesn't make it not creationism when you go to court. And you can't put in a general standard saying teach faults or teach criticisms without saying what it is, because there's nothing specific to teach and there's nothing specific to test. What we've learned in other states, if you put in a standard like that, it's taken by certain people as a license to teach anything in the creationist literature. And that literature is a vast mishmash of false claims and bad arguments, and it's also darn confusing to beginners, as I think we've seen today. By the way, how can we tell right now that it really is false claims and bad arguments? We can take a big clue from the recent creationism trial in Dover, Pennsylvania. The professional creationists who write this stuff and get people all stirred up would not come and support it under oath. They won't support this stuff if they have to testify under oath. The one part they supported was what they call irreducible complexity, which turns out to be a misleading term for co-adapted parts. And evolution naturally gives you co-adapted parts. So that argument doesn't get very far.
One more minute.
And the same thing could happen to us in Florida. The big-time creationists would egg us on, and then jump ship and leave us looking like fools. Who needs that? And we certainly cannot ask our teachers to teach stuff that cannot be defended under oath. We can't. So what's left for us to do? The only thing left for us to do, all of us here today, folks, is to get behind our good new science standards. My friends, let's all support our new science standards and help Florida get an A this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Robin Brown. Welcome.
Don't leave my mic out. Hello again. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I also want to say hello to the board that I assume is over there, and thank you also. My name is Robin Brown. I am a recently retired science teacher of 31 years from Polk County. I did speak to you in Jacksonville at the public meeting and gave you many references to many outstanding scientists who feel this is a contemporary controversy, and in fairness to the students, a single view does not afford them an opportunity to view other scientific data that is available. The Zogby poll shows 71% of our population favors teaching other views. On the standards, grade 6, big idea, which has been mentioned already, 15, evolution is the only one that is supported. The reason I felt I needed to come today is to offer you an idea that would be related to true science, which should include the evaluation of new ideas and alternative ways of knowing, as the Florida Science Curriculum Framework states. I understand you have done much research before presenting these science standards, but as I have taught my students for years, one person can make a difference. So here goes. Did all life that we see today form very slowly over vast periods of time? Was there a time when a master designer created all the different kinds of life on Earth? Neither of these questions can be answered with certainty. It has been said by some that the study of fossils provides a means of seeing evolution. Others have stated that the fossil evidence favors creation. Perhaps the students can decide by observing data which idea seems to fit best. Yes, a two-model study of this question is a way to approach the data through scientific inquiry. If you have the opportunity to study all the data, you can decide which model makes more sense to you. The final decision is yours to make. This module will help you think critically, and through this, your decision-making skills will be strengthened. I've just read to you an introduction page to the student from one of the books I will be asking you to consider as a supplement to the curriculum or in addition to it. Fossils, Key to the Present, written by Dr. Richard Bliss, who taught science for 39 years at the high school level, was an adjunct professor for teaching science to educators in Wisconsin. Dr. Gary Parker, formerly a research associate and professor of biology, Phi Beta Kappa, and received several awards from National Science Foundation, and Dr. Dwayne Gish. He spent 18 years of biochemical research at Cornell University and received his biochemistry degree from California and Berkeley. These three well-educated authors have written many wonderful books for teachers and students, but I wanted to bring just three that I'm recommending for consideration. Origin of Life, Fossils, Key to Present, and Pandas and People. These books could be used from 5 to 9 grade level, or at least available for them to read. That's all. I continue to hear that there is no scientific evidence for any other view except evolution, and I present to you that there is. And the students should not be deprived from knowing about other evidences.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
These are the two books.
David Moss. David Moss. David Moss. Okay. Thank you.
How you doing?
Morning. Afternoon, actually.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I guess on behalf of Darwin's birthday tomorrow, we're trying to make the old man roll around his grave a little bit. I want to say that I'm a teacher of young people. I'm a scientist by nature. I advocate science. I study biology, geology, and chemistry in college. And by all means, I'm a fan of teaching our youth true scientific knowledge. However, as most people here, I'm adamantly opposed to teaching speculation as scientific dogma. And specifically, I'm against some of the new science standards regarding evolution. I guess it's the hot topic. And I just want to talk real briefly on science. We know that the basis of all scientific knowledge is, or inquiry, is the scientific method, right? And those things are based on two things, observation and experimentation. All right, now we ask, has evolution ever been observed? And to clarify that, we have never seen evolution of non-life into life. We've never observed that. You can check the scientific literature. And we've never observed simple creatures turning into more complex creatures. Now, we've seen complex creatures changing, and that's great. We observe that all the time. I have my reasons for why that happened. Now people look to the fossil record also, and they say, well, there's your proof. But unfortunately, you need to observe a process, right? And there's no processes going on in dead bones except for decay. And so, no, the fossil record does not prove evolution. And then we go to experiments, all right? That's the other part of the scientific method. Can we experiment with evolution? Well, evolution is proposed as a random theory. And so how can you intelligently manipulate an experiment and say that, yes, evolution is true? It's a random occurrence. That's impossible to do. And so, from the scientific method, we can conclude that evolution is not a true scientific theory. It's a hypothesis, that's true. But lastly, what I wanted to talk about is, if we're going to include evolution in the curriculum, then let's include it in all the subjects. What do you mean? That's kind of conflicting to what I've already said. Well, mathematics, let's include it there. Let's study the probabilities, right, of life forming from non-life, and we'll see that it's mathematically impossible. History, as a young man said earlier, let's study the life of Hitler and see that he was a man who took to heart evolution, and we see the eugenics programs that he produced. I don't think we want our students turning out like that. And finally, I'll conclude, let's study philosophy or humanities, and that if we teach our students, our young people, that they are nothing but the result of a few random interactions over time, then how in the world will they ever become something? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Daly. Bill Daly.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here today. In all of our textbooks, we can find, all of our biology textbooks, there's a term that says, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. I happen to disagree with that. I think biology makes a lot of sense in spite of evolution. Now, to disagree with that term, as a science teacher, as a student or a professor at a university, you can be discriminated against. Your job could be in jeopardy. Because of this discrimination, I've become involved in an organization which is counterproductive to that. I think that it's just a fun thing, but it could have serious ramifications. I'm a board member and here to represent the First Church of Evolution based in Florida. We are not opposed to the teaching of evolution. We are a nonprofit 501c3 faith-based religious organization. We are recognized by the federal government, the Division of Corporations in the state of Florida, sales tax exempt, a legally functioning church. Our denomination is not affiliated with or supported by any other religious organizations. We are composed of people who believe it takes faith to believe in evolution. Having said that, our concern over the proposed new standards is that they could have a counterproductive impact on the presentation of evolution. As science has progressed forward with advancement in microevolution, the concept of change above species or macroevolution has remained as first envisioned by Darwin's grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, as bold imagination. By chance and coincidence, the imaginary teachings presented in the present public school textbooks represent a large portion of our church's doctrine and the religion that Charles Darwin identified as evolving from his imagination. Portions of Darwin's writings are part of a faith-based belief system which up until this point, the concept of macroevolution has remained an acceptable theory within the secular arena. Much of the verbiage contained within the new standards moves the teaching of evolution from an acceptable theory to a governmental advocated religion. While this church may see the passage of these suggestions as foolishness, our concern is that some may see these actions as a violation of the separation of church and state, thereby restricting the ability of students to take that bold leap into the realm of imagination. Albert Einstein said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Our church congregation is opposed to these new standards for these reasons.
Thank you very much. Thank you. James Stewart. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Based on what I've heard so far, I think there's a lot of confusion about what exactly a scientific theory is, so I've prepared a statement to go over that. In the popular view, the word theory means simply something that is unproven, an assertion which may or may not be true. It is this meaning which the creationists refer to when they say that evolution is just a theory. The implication being that if evolution hasn't been proven, then it should have no more standing than creationism. In science, however, the word theory has a very definite meaning. Under the scientific method, the first step in investigation is to gather data and information in the form of verifiable evidence. Once data has been gathered, the next step is to form a hypothesis which would explain the data. This hypothesis is quite simply nothing more than an intelligent guess. A hypothesis is in fact the closest scientific term to what most people mean when they say theory. Once a hypothesis has been formed, it is compared against the data, both old and new, to see how well it fits with the established facts. If the hypothesis is contradicted by the data, then it must be either modified and tested again, or discarded completely and a new hypothesis formed. Once a hypothesis has passed the test of verification through data, it becomes a scientific theory. It becomes an established framework within which to interpret the relationship of various bits of raw data. On the basis of this theory, new hypotheses are formed and areas in which new data may be gathered are identified. If the theory continues to correctly explain new data and serves to correctly predict the outcome of scientific experiments, it is said to have a high degree of reliability. Such a theory is not a mere supposition or guess. It is a hypothesis that has been verified by direct experimentation and which has demonstrated a high degree of predictability. One cannot reject the theory of evolution without rejecting the theory of gravity or the theory of flight. Both of those theories also have extraordinary amounts of evidence to support them. There is no debate in the scientific community about whether evolution occurs. Our children deserve the best scientific education they can get in order for them to be our next physicists, neurosurgeons, and biochemists. I fully support adopting the proposed Florida science education standards as is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Reverend Neil Genzel. Reverend Neil Genzel. Reverend Neil Genzel. Okay, come on up. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Neil Genzel. I'm the pastor of Coquina Presbyterian Church in Ormond Beach, Florida. I'm here knowing 3 tenured college professors teaching physics, astrophysics, and mathematics in a private university, not sectarian, not a Christian school, and 7 teachers, 1 administrator in my own congregation. As a result of my discussions with them and my review of the old standards and these, I come asking you to reject the proposed revision of the K through 12 grade standards for the life sciences body of knowledge, that part of the standards. These revisions seek to enshrine a particular scientific viewpoint in the public school system and are also designed to produce a particular kind of scientific mindset in our students. Not a science, but a particular kind of science. The science and scientists who will be produced by Florida's public school system under the catechizing influences of this K through 12th grade approach to life sciences will be nothing more than philosophical Darwinists. This is tragic. The revision should have been designed to simply produce students who have a thoroughgoing scientific mindset, that is, one that appreciates the multifaceted activity of scientific inquiry and the acceptable methods of that inquiry. Instead, the revisions are devoted to produce a narrow-minded scientific mindset in our students. It is true
that neo-Darwinian science is the reigning scientific theory of the day. But the committee and its advisors arrogantly assume that this one theory is the final and only model for the explanation of the origin, existence, and variety of the species in the animal world, including humans. Educated people have made this kind of a mistake before. I'd like to remind you that alchemy was once considered the ruling theory of science through the 17th century in many parts of Europe. Newton and Galileo gave us one authoritative understanding of time, and then came Einstein and relativity. The human family has been embarrassed many times by various versions of the Flat Earth Society.
One more minute.
Any theory of science which presumes it is the last word on a subject assumes too much about itself and assumes too little about what can be known about this marvelous universe we are in. We are creating the same kind of situation that faced Galileo the scientist in 1633 and John Scopes the high school teacher in 1925. The educational standards and the politics of their day plunged them into crises of conscience, professional harassment, public humiliation, termination of employment, even trial for religious heresy. This is what inevitably happens when a particular scientific theory or religious doctrine utilizes the coercive powers of government as a means of advancing its influence. What you have in these proposed revisions are nothing less than the neo-Darwinian viewpoint attempting to consolidate its position in the state of Florida and be the reigning theory governing the way we teach children life sciences. That's a bad idea. Imagine Clarence Darrow or one of his descendants getting hold of one of these children or parents or teachers concerned that their constitutional rights have been violated, their right to free speech and free inquiry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chad Miller. Chad Miller. Chad Miller. I think he's right behind you. Yep. Welcome.
Thank you for allowing us to speak on these matters. I am not a product of Florida's educational system. I'm from Georgia, and in Georgia we have traditionally had terrible science education in general. We've been next to last. I'm pretty sure that the seal of our Board of Education reads in Latin, "Not last, thank you, Mississippi." I have a few things to say about the science standards, and I'll take a short tour through a couple of disciplines. On page 53, for instance, in grade 6, the benchmark reads, "Measure and graph distance versus time for an object moving at a constant speed." Well, this is a fine benchmark, but should we be surprised that there's no one here claiming that Newtonian physics is flawed, as the benchmark wants us to measure? No one's pointing to the work of Einstein and others to say that in grade 6 we should teach the flaws of motion and such. So, or consider the research of last year even that suggests that the relativistic speed c of light is not necessarily always a constant. It hasn't always been a constant. Why don't people complain about this? The reason is that to introduce the bleeding edge at the same time we introduce the firm foundations of what we want to teach, we would do the opposite of what we want. We would confuse the students instead of teaching them. Let's turn to physics, to chemistry. In the periodic table, some chemists say that as the table is structured, columns showing similarly behaving elements. Some chemists believe that our current model is flawed, that hydrogen shouldn't be in the upper left corner, it should be in the upper right corner, next to helium. Now, in addition, we have a strong idea that there exists this span of stable, super heavy elements beneath the periodic table. We've never seen these. We already know what they would be like, but we haven't seen them yet. No one complains about this supposed problem in these two problems in chemistry. Why? Because to teach students these early, it would confuse them about what we do know. these are not exceptions. Every piece of science has these bleeding edges where there are weird ideas that we're still exploring. Finally, let's consider what many people here propose, that we should drown students in the details that we're still learning about evolution.
If you wrap it up.
What?
Begin to wrap it up, a half minute.
Very well. Our knowledge of evolution is imperfect, but it's very, very strong. We're still learning. But students' time in class is precious. We don't have time to confuse kids about the bleeding edge or our research. We should encourage students to ask questions, but not let them stray before they understand what we have learned so far. In looking at this crowd, I'm sorry. Finally, the place for Floridians to question the scientific establishment is in grad school, not in grade school. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Joanne Wilson. Joanne Wilson.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come back and speak, and I thank God that I was able to make it. In what I've been hearing today, and then in some things I've been reading, I am opposed to these new science standards to teach evolution as fact, because from what I can understand and everything that I can read, evolution has not been proven. So how can the Department of Education write something in these teaching standards to teach our children a lie if it's not been proven? I'm just asking you to please, if it does come to that you need the theory of evolution, fine, but please, I beg of you, not put in there that evolution is a fact as to how everything was formed and made on this earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Faye Armitage. That's exactly right. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, my name is Faye Armitage, and I'm here from Jacksonville. And we had somebody here from the State House District 7. Well, I'm a candidate for U.S. House District 7. And I'm here because it's very important to me that we foster a strong biomedical and green technology industry in Florida. And I just wanted to commend all those who have worked on the new science standards that include evolution. And I would like you to adopt the science standards as drafted, wherein evolution is stated as a fundamental concept of biology. The meaning of the word theory in scientific context is different than in everyday language. In common usage, a theory is just a guess. In scientific terms, a theory, like gravity, is a testable explanation of phenomenon based on facts. If you use the word theory to imply that scientists think evolution is just a hypothesis and not real, that gives an incorrect impression. If you use the word theory to say it's the best idea to explain how it works, then I guess it's good. Personally, I don't care if somebody wants to believe that the world is 6,000 years old and that humans walked with dinosaurs. Where I draw the line is when such individuals try to force their unscientific and insupportable beliefs into the science curriculum. I believe Florida's economy depends on a thriving biomedical research industry. Without a solid science education starting in Florida's high schools, we will not be able to supply the researchers needed to maintain our 4th place nationally in the biomed arena. Putting doubt into the theory of evolution is a backdoor way of introducing religious concept into science, and I strongly oppose that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next call, Julie Williams.
Thank you all for letting me talk. I wanted to say that evolution has not been proven, is what I'm understanding. but I am a Christian who does believe that God created the world in 7 days. I also believe that the Bible is true, and I believe that there are many examples of prophesying, not predicting events that would happen centuries in the future. So there are a lot of proven facts in the Bible. Prayer and Bible reading have been removed from the schools, and if you can discontinue teaching creationism, one more time Christian influence in the schools is diminished. I was a kindergarten assistant. I also subbed in the schools, and I know there is a discipline problem. I believe that without belief in God, without belief in God, I do not understand why you would expect administrators or teachers to require discipline in the classrooms. All those principles are taught by God and are covered in His commandment to love one another, to honor, to obey one another, to respect, to love oneself, and to tell the truth, to not steal, and to not kill. Florida does not have to cave in to pressure by the other states to teach a theory as fact. If it's not been proven as fact, but the DOE says that it is, then how can you expect our students to tell the truth? And how can you expect our students not to cheat on tests? Please do the right thing and do not teach it as a fact. A theory would be fine, but please, not as a fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Matt, that's it. Thank you. I appreciate your help.
How you doing? My name is Matt DeVlieger. I'm with the ACLU of Florida. I'm a staff associate there. I'm also a member. The ACLU of Florida commends the work of the committee for developing the proposed teaching standards that have been highly acclaimed by students and educators. I also feel it's very important that our students understand science to become well-rounded participants of the community. The ACLU is the largest civil liberties organization in the state, and the ACLU of Florida believes that to allow certain political and religious groups to have their religion-based ideas influence the science curriculum violates the separation of church and state, and it also threatens students' freedom of religion. The ACLU of Florida urges that the curriculum standards for the teaching of science in Florida specifically include reference to the teaching of the explanatory theory of evolution rather than the intentionally vague concept of biological changes over time. The curriculum's reference to evolution will also help protect teachers and students from the pressure applied by political and religious organizations to have the science curriculum reflect their specific religious views, including alternative theories or criticisms of evolution taught in classrooms. The origins of this have come from creationism and the biblical idea of creationism, which was disguised as scientific creationism, and now has recently evolved into intelligent design. This movement has also adapted to have more vague implications, now requesting that the word theory be emphasized before the word evolution. Proponents of intelligent design and the disclaimer that was to be read in the Dover, Pennsylvania schools denigrates the theory of evolution as a theory, not a fact, erroneously equating the position of a theory in science with the everyday use of the word theory, which is more like a good guess or a hunch. Evolution is a theory in the scientific sense because it draws together and explains through one framework a vast amount of observational evidence. Intelligent design, on the other hand, does no such thing. The ACLU of Georgia recently won a case to Cobb County School District policy for their policy of placing warning stickers on biology textbooks, which singled out the theory of evolution as just a theory, thus misleading Cobb County students on what constitutes a scientific theory.
If you could wrap it up.
Yeah, the ACLU opposes the attempts to masquerade intelligent design as a science. We work to promote and protect the freedom of belief for all Americans. Everyone has the right to believe or not believe intelligent design. They do not, however, have the right to have their religious beliefs taught as if they were science. Please do not revise our state science standards in a way that opens the door for a Florida school board to be seduced by the proponents of intelligent design. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Patricia Weeks.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My name is Patricia Weeks, and I reside in Glen St. Mary, Florida. I have worked in education all my adult life. I am the chairman of the Baker County School Board, and in my 16th year of serving the constituents of my county. My concerns today, as everyone who's spoken, revolve around the life sciences standard that recognizes evolution as the factual fundamental concept underlying all biology. Speaking as an educator, I am uneasy that these standards do not encourage students to challenge this one theory, while over and over in the standards that we have before us encourage students to become critical thinkers who make scientific inquiry in all other areas. The standards deny academic freedom to teachers and students to explore both strengths and weaknesses of Darwinian evolution. If the aim of the new Florida State Science Standards is to produce world-class students who have sufficient depth of understanding of the underlying concepts of science, they must be supported in making a challenge to established theories. Even in the revised standards, there is no recognition that a controversy about Darwinian evolution exists and that students should learn about that controversy. Academic freedom exposes students to all sides of a debate. I am proposing that students be allowed to explore serious, scholarly critiques of Darwinian evolution. We have heard today from framers of the science standards. It is to be expected that they would support their body of work. And one of the framers who's spoken today is a school board member, and I think she exemplifies the problem with critical thinking. And that is that she blames the school boards in this state who have opposed these standards for the poor science performance of our students. I would suggest that she has been on the front lines of science education as well as the other framers. And if there is anyone to consider the problems that our students are facing in performing well, it is in that science classroom, not as a school board. Please do not send a mixed message to teachers and students alike by asking them as to one benchmark does to provide only evidence that supports the theory of evolution without question or scientific inquiry. Instead, I implore you on the behalf of my constituents, parents, and serious scholars across our state to promote true academic freedom, critical thinking, and scientific inquiry by allowing all theories to come under the scrutiny of examination and research. Let us truly exemplify an educational system that seeks to produce world-class students. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Omar Grenzadi. That's it. Getting close. Welcome.
My name is Omar Gonzalez, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I have 3 children in the public schools here in Florida, and I am speaking in support of these standards. There's a couple comments I'd like to make. First, I believe that if our children are going to be able to compete in the global marketplace, that they need to have a strong science education, and these standards go a long way to doing that. Second, evolution is a fact, and it should be taught as such. There is an enormous amount of evidence that supports that, and there's a lot of misinformation regarding the critiques that people have. For example, the idea that there are no transitional fossils. Archaeopteryx is a great example of a transitional fossil. The third thing is that I'm also a Christian. I am a Presbyterian. I am going towards ordination into the ministry. And as a Christian, I do not have a problem with evolution as being incompatible with a Christian worldview. There are many, the Roman Catholic Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Episcopalians, and others who have seen that there is a compatibility between evolution and between Christianity or many other faiths, including the Judaism and others. So based on this, I would strongly encourage you to pass these standards for the future of science education in the state of Florida and in our country. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chip Rolke? Good afternoon.
Hello, my name's Chip Rolke. I'm from Brevard County. My background is I have a BS MS degree in basically management information systems from FIT. I'm the president of Shuttle Products International, also Tropical Breeze Properties. And you guys have brought up quite a controversial subject here with making such a somewhat dogmatic statement about evolution, I'm afraid. And, to me, first of all, let me just say that I've studied this issue for 26 years in some depth. And the only thing that I'm truly certain of is that both of them take a tremendous leap of faith. Whether it's evolution, atheistical evolution, or whether it's creation, both of them are models. You cannot prove either one because they're not observable in a laboratory. You're dealing about events that happened at some period of time in the past. And all we can do is try to correlate facts, and from those facts create some kind of worldview. And essentially this debate between creation and evolution is a debate of worldviews. It is not a debate necessarily over who's right and who's wrong, because you can't prove that. One thing I wanted to share with you is if you wanted to get into a lot more depth in this whole issue, there was a debate in Oxford University in 1986 between Richard Dawkins, who's one of the foremost evolutionists today, and Dr. A.E. Wilder Smith. Dr. A.E. Wilder Smith took the positive argument in the debate, and it was over whether or not the creation model is a better model than neo-Darwinism. And it was a 3-hour debate at Oxford University, full of people that come from a very materialistic evolutionary background.
One more minute.
And bottom line is Dr. Wilder Smith got anywhere, there's a little debate as to how much of the vote that he got after this debate, but it's between 115 and 150 votes, and Richard Dawkins got 200 votes. Now that is astounding, because Richard Dawkins, after the debate, went up there and pleaded with people that one vote for Dr. Wilder Smith's position of creation and special design would forever disgrace the University of Oxford. Well, 115 to 150 people disagreed with him and felt that Dr. Wilder Smith's arguments were devastating. And he's got 3 PhDs in pharmacology, biology. He's one of the foremost scientists in the world in this area. And all I can tell you is, rather than create a huge controversy by forcing this down the throats of little children in school who are so open to believing authority figures, leave it as a theory. That would make a lot more sense.
Thank you. Paul Wester?